Good evening, I'm the Rock Dog.
And I'm Gabe.
How are you doing tonight? We're going to blast through a interesting subject. I think maybe all of ours are interesting, hopefully.
Yeah.
Um, this one we're going to have to cover first because as we start to go into Revelation and things, you have to understand biblical numbers. And I wasn't sure if the proper term was numerology, but it is. That's the study of numbers and how they relate to your life. So we're going to try to tackle the basics of biblical numerology just to give you a little bit of a groundwork to understanding Revelation better when we cover it.
Yeah, and plus there's some interesting things to find out about numbers in the Bible. And I think it's too. I think a lot of people are going to be like, "That's kind of an iffy subject." You'd be like, kind of scared about it. But the truth is that even you may not be aware of this, already kind of follow biblical numerology. Probably haven't noticed it. Think of the number 666. Everybody knows about that. Everyone believes something about that.
Right, and there's the verse that contains 666, just for reference.
Yes, but the point is, everyone has an understanding that that number is important. So why is that the only number people are willing to think of as important?
Right. Yeah, there's so many other examples of numbers in the Bible that they have to be important. It's just, otherwise, why would God leave them in the Bible? He could have just left them out if there wasn't a reason they were important.
Yeah, and think about it this way. Even if you're still on the defense, just think about this very simple fact. Why is every verse numbered?
Yeah, could have not been numbered.
Yeah, I can't think of a single other book that's ever been written explicitly to have numbers for every verse.
Is Shakespeare?
I don't think so.
I'd check a recording with my phone. You'd have to look it up, but I think,
But it's still pretty unique.
Yeah, or what's his face? Nostradamus has quatrains. I believe they're numbered.
But still, it's very.
But they're probably all numbered because they were using the example from the Bible.
Yeah. But it's still, the point is it's not every sentence that's numbered. It's every verse.
Yeah.
So it's there's still, the numbering is interesting because it's sometimes it's a single sentence and that's its own verse and therefore has its own number. Sometimes it'd be a whole paragraph and it's only one verse and therefore one number.
And the fact is broken up into verses that have significant meanings instead of just whole chapters or something. Some verses are just which verse was it? Well, the shortest verse in the Bible, this too shall pass, could have been added to the previous sentence or the one after easily. So there has to be an important reason these are numbered and spaced out, or is it kernied the way it's supposed to be?
Yeah. When also, I'm sure the idea or the intent at first was maybe to make it easier to reference a specific passage directly. It's like the famous John 3:16. You don't have to go John 3 and then the third sentence or whatever, or just say we'll kind of skim past the first few and then go. It's like no, it's the 16th passage of John 3, so it's more easier.
Chapter 4.
Yeah, but the point is that it's easier to find each one too. I'm sure that was the original intent when people were writing it, but God's intent was probably to also have the numbers have meaning. And we'll add some proof for this too, showing the how certain numbers are repeated in use.
Yeah, and you'll hear us through our all of our talks in series. We'll often say, "Oh yeah, number 3 or number 4," and we'll just throw out these facts and meanings like it's every day to us, and you're probably left sitting there going, "What? Why did they do that? That doesn't make any sense." So we're going to try to show you the basis of why we keep doing that, because when you take a verse and you look at it from so many different angles, be it context, time and place, if there's a number factor, if there's a parallel to another verse, there's so many different ways to look at each verse that if you just read it, you're not getting the complete knowledge, information or story or what I believe God is trying to portray to you. So I promise you, when you get done watching this, you will never see the world or the Bible the same way again. We didn't once we learned this. Everything we're like, aha, number 3, or aha, this means 20 means this, and that, and everything just opens up into something entirely different. Yeah, so what are you looking up really quick?
Well, I was thinking the first one we start with is 3, since that's tends to be known as the
Trinity.
yeah, it's the number for God. So I thought that would be a good basis to start with.
Okay.
Is finding examples for that. So go ahead and maybe just start that while I find some passages that might be interesting.
I'm supposed to just rattle that off the top of my head, and you're gonna have the passages. That
Well,
doesn't seem fair.
I mean, like get a good like starting point and explain the idea of numbers and then how the number associates with God.
I thought we could do John 3:16 would be the best way
building
to
up
show.
to that.
Oh, building up to it. Okay.
Yeah.
So number
that's why
3.
I didn't want to do that yet.
Yeah, I think most religious or non-religious people think of the number 3 as, important. The Trinity, or what's another example of 3? I'm trying to think.
Well, this one mentions matter exists in 3 forms: gaseous, liquid, and solid.
Yeah.
And the forces of nature are gravitation, light, and electricity.
Okay, yeah, so
time
obviously,
is divided into 3 parts: past, present, and future.
True. A lot of good examples of 3 being important.
Well, also those are things that God made the earth in specifically made the universe operates in teams of 3, I suppose you could say. So that's kind of interesting. But there's also body, mind, and spirit.
Yeah, true.
So the book says that the 3 is more about the divine completeness, but also is therefore associated with God in that sense too.
Right.
So that's what the Holy Trinity is. God does everything in 3s.
Well, and so if someone's not aware, the Trinity refers to God the Father, God the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and there's Cuddles. Let's hope she doesn't sneeze right on one of us or the camera. Hey.
That's interesting.
What are you doing up here?
Apparently, there's also 3 sections to the human brain. These are called the cerebrum, the cerebellum, and the medulla oblongata. And the brain is invested by 3 membranes. Do
you want to show them the book that you're referring to in your reading, so that we've shown it before?
So this book is really good. Because it goes into why this concept makes sense. It also goes into each individual number and shows you a ton of listings of passages and also things in real life that follow these rules of these numbers. Don't hit the mic, because if you hit the mic, it completely cuts out all audio.
Yeah, I probably did just hit the mic. I'm just trying to keep, Cuddles is right in front of it, and I'm just waiting for her to do something.
Yeah. Well, I noticed, last week's video, you hit the mic, and it completely cut out what I was saying.
Well, at least it didn't make a huge noise.
Yeah, but I had to, find that audio for somewhere else because it was super important, and it never got cut off.
Sorry.
Yeah, so you gotta be careful.
Well, if Cuddles sneezes right in the microphone now, we're all gonna go deaf.
Yeah. But, yeah, so this book, it's super useful for looking through different things. But yeah, so the idea is that in the Bible, it uses the number 3 a lot in reference to God.
Yeah.
But then there's also number 7 too, and
you're saying a lot.
Well, because I thought you would chime in.
I'm drawing a blank. I didn't know we were talking about the number 3. I mean, I think you kind of covered 3.
Well, I thought we would give examples so that people would be convinced that this actually makes sense.
Like verse examples?
Sure. Or just, well, you can come up with things you can think of off the top of your head that use 7,
Oh, I thought we were on 3. Now we're on 7?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we're just going through some examples.
Well,
unless you can think of more things.
7 deadly sins.
Yeah, but is that even biblical?
Sort of. I think it's more Catholic.
Well, yeah, it's the 7 deadly sins.
7 C's
were of Dante and the Divine Comedy. He made it those for that, but I think the history of the 7 deadly sins. It was actually the author of the Divine Comedy. He was basing those
Dante?
7. Yeah, he based those off of the church leaders at the time of because he was really angry with them. It goes, they all have these sins, and so he made those the subject of the 7 deadly sins. That's what I remember, anyways.
Dante's Inferno is what he's referencing. If you need to look it up.
Yeah. Then one with what's the Divine Comedy?
Isn't that also Dante?
I think so. Maybe it's multiple books of his. I'm conflating as one.
Yeah.
Because I know there's also, after the Inferno, there's also Paradiso, I think. Was the second one.
Yeah, so, well, I'd have to be near the computer to pull up more different things. You're over there.
Yeah. So she's waiting for me to find all these things for her since she's kind of stuck over there.
Yeah. I'm on Cuddles'
Well,
watch.
then if you want, how about you do 7? Don't hit that.
Okay, so...
So what is 7?
A number? Or you just... Okay.
Oh, the number 7 is basically perfection.
Okay. Yeah, so perfection. So you often hear, like, the number 666. Why is that evil? Why is it... what knowledge are you supposed to impart or be so wise about the number? And it says it's a man's number. Well, 7 is God's number. It's the number of completeness, perfection. It's just that way. So 7 and multiples of 7 are often considered lucky numbers or things like that. But for instance, just in the book of Revelation alone, I'm just going to read from this. It's used throughout 7 churches, 7 spirits, 7 stars, 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 vials, 7 personages, 7 dooms, 7 new things, and 7 symbolizes spiritual perfection, which we covered. 7 is used over 700 times in the Bible. It's used 54 times alone in the book of Revelation. The whole word of God is founded upon the number 7. As in the 7th day of creation, the 7th day of the week is considered the end of the week, or the beginning of the week, the way you look at it. But that's the day that we're supposed to rest, the 7th day of the week. So that's the Sabbath. Sabbath, again, has to do with complete. So God rested on the 7th day. So also Revelation 10:7, ironically, says, in the days of the voice of the 7th angel shall begin to sound, the mystery of God will be finished. So 7 is definitely completeness. There's many examples of, and everybody knows the 7 days of creation, the 7th day is rest, or when God said it is done, or it is complete. So let's see if there was another expression with 7. And these all seem to come in Revelation, but of course the 7th angel poured out his vial into the air, and there came a great voice out of the temple to heaven from the throne saying, it is done. And that's Revelation 16:17. So, of course, Genesis, like I said, the 7 days. There are 7 notes in a musical scale.
Don't forget, the Israelites had to walk around Jericho's walls 7 times.
Yeah. Noah took the clean beasts into the ark by 7s. We often think when we see paintings and things, they were in pairs of 2. But of course, it's talking about clean beasts. So that's Genesis 7:2. So often these 7 numbers are in verses that contain 7, it seems to be. 7 days after Noah went into the ark, the flood came. That's Genesis 7:9-10. And then Peter tells about the long suffering of God waiting in the days of Noah's. That's first Noah. 1 Peter 3:21. Those 7 days completed God's time of waiting. So, of course, Aaron and his sons entered the priestly work and were consecrated for 7 days. It says, the Day of Atonement, the high priest sprinkled the blood upon the mercy seat and before the mercy seat 7 times, which is a picture of completeness and the redemptive works of Christ. So, like he said, Walls of Jericho, 7 days. I'm just going to try to look. There's 7 feast days of the Lord's. That's Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, Pentecost, atonement, trumpets, and tabernacle. There's 7 branches on the candlestick in the holy place of the tabernacle, which is a picture of the complete light of God for the souls of man. Solomon was 7 years in building the temple and kept the feast for 7 days. Job had 7 sons. Let's see. When his friends came to visit him, they sat 7 days and 7 nights in silence and afterwards they required the burnt offering of 7 bullocks and 7 rams. I mean, there's just so many examples here that we could go on.
There could be a bit of a confusion between the difference between 3 and 7.
Yeah.
3 is basically if it's divine or if it's speaking of God Himself, and 7 if it's something that's still perfect.
Even but it refers to man, I think.
Yeah. There's also the number 4 refers to Earth. And this one's actually pretty simple to explain.
Let's see.
There are 4 directions on the compass. We refer to the Earth as having hemispheres, meaning there's 4 sections of the Earth. There's, of course, the equator. The equator is the middle. On the top of that, it's the top and bottom. But then it's also cut in half of east and west.
Right.
So you have north, south, east, and west.
4 seasons.
4 seasons, yes. I forgot about that.
Which, of course, refers to the Earth, because seasons are on the Earth. There's 4 kingdoms of... which is mineral, vegetable, animal, and spiritual. I'm not sure what they mean by that. 4 winds. That's a little more common. There's 4 divisions of our day, and that would be morning, noon, evening, and night. There's 4 phases of the moon. New moon, last moon, full moon, and last quarter. I don't know if I said that already. So...
And also there are 4 oceans. There is the Pacific, Atlantic, Indian, and Arctic Ocean. However, apparently it happened just this last month. There was they decided to make a new 5th ocean. So if you look around on like Google nowadays, it would be referring to a Southern Ocean. However,
which is ironic because 5 means grace or God's goodness.
I don't know if that has any meaning to this, though.
Well, considering what's going on in the world right now, we could certainly use some grace or God's goodness.
True.
So it's the timing is very... See, that's why I said you always start referring to numbers, you find interesting timing.
Yeah, but the point is that they changed the number. However, historically, as far as back as I can find, I can't find the first usage of 5 oceans, but I can't figure out how long 4 oceans has been in play.
Yeah.
So, as far as I can tell, for the longest amount of time, who knows how long, it's always been 4 oceans.
Yeah.
So that Southern Ocean, I guess, maybe it counts technically, because now it's in use by everybody.
There you go.
But it's only been used since June. But,
yeah, I don't know if you guys could hear that.
Yeah. So, basically, 4 has a lot to do with Earth, or things on the Earth. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting. But that's also something too that everyone's familiar with, but never even noticed the number 4 being in use on all these different things,
usually referring to the Earth or something to do with the Earth.
Yeah, because we always thought about morning, noon, night, dawn, or whatever it was. It's like we always think of the day having 4 phases, but we never even realized it was 4. You know.
Yeah.
So. The 4 winds, I didn't even think about that, you know? The 4 seasons.
Yep. Yeah, 4 divisions. On the 4th day, the material creation was finished in Genesis 1:14 through 19. So the next one I want to go to is 16. So 16, from what I can remember, and it's been a while, it doesn't get used too often, surprisingly, or at least in this book. There's very few references to it, as far as I can tell. Oh, actually, it looks like there's quite a bit. Yeah. So 16 is the number that represents love. It's found 23 times in the Bible. There's... sorry, she's going to have to get comfortable. There's... Let's see...
Well, the thing that made people think that 16 is a number for love is because in 1 Corinthians 13:4 through 8, which also, by the way, that's 4 verses.
Do you want to pull that up so they can view it?
Yeah.
You're a rusty motor. You sound like a Ford. So if you're listening to us and not watching and you're hearing a weird rusty motor Ford sound, it's the cat. It's Cuddles. She's right in front of the microphone, so.
Why is it
not? And that's, she's been refusing to get on camera, and now today, You just want to be the star of the show, don't you?
So, this version, let's simplify it. Where's New Games?
There it is. Yeah, so we're
That's
using
the
the
one
New
everyone's-
King James version just to make it, to take out the these and thous and make it a little easier to understand.
And also, it's the one everyone's more familiar with. So, for instance, this one is the one you see like on those crosses people hang up that has the verse written on the cross.
Oh yeah.
So like that. This is what everyone's familiar with. In verse 13, 4 through 8, it mentions love suffers long and is kind. Love does not envy. Love is this, and that. And it lists off...
It's a love chapter.
Yeah, it lists off 16 different things that describe love.
Yeah.
So that was the initial thing that made people equate the number 16 to love, as well as 1 Corinthians being considered a book about love in a lot of ways. It's also only 16 chapters long.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So if you pull it all together, does the numbers in John 3:16 mean anything?
Yeah. So 3 means God, 16 means love. Here's even the better part. John is the fourth book of the New Testament, is it not?
Yeah, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Yeah.
So John, just replace that with the number 4, which means earth, and you have earth, God, love, for God so loved the world.
Yeah.
So if you had any doubts that the numbers of the passages themselves had any meaning, that should alone tell you there's some meaning to it.
Which we were discussing this the other day, and when we send, I think, like Voyager into space to try to find alien life form, we put math on it. Math is the universal language. So why would the creator of the universe not do the same thing to us? Send us math or numbers, because it's universal. As much as you might hate math out there and hate numbers, and I've already gone, this is like doing my taxes. If you can kind of sit through it and look at it, you realize it's a universal language, and it literally is speaking to us, saying God so loved the world. Like,
just for the numbers alone.
Just the numbers alone. You could forget everything I ever said. That verse says it in the numbers. And we haven't spent the time to find any others, but I'm sure there are.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. For instance, like I said, in the number 16, there's only 16 chapters in 1 Corinthians. So it's the book about love in which we get number 16 for love.
Right.
It also said that what's most funny though is at the beginning it says that love is this number of 16 is found 23 times in the Bible, and
which is also the number of death.
Number of death, and it's the usage of where they found 16, which is 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 8. 13 is also considered an unlucky number, even to the Jews. So it's kind of funny that love is associated with both death and the unlucky number 13.
Ouch.
Yeah. Not to mention, it's verses 4 through 8.
There's a whole lot of people out there right now, single people or people who have been burned by love, going, yes, I can relate to this. This is my kind of preaching. Yeah. See, God understands that too.
But also, it's verses 4 through 8. 4 is world, and 8 is new beginnings. And there's only 4 in between that.
Yeah.
So 4 and 4. So there's 2 instances of 4. 2 being union,
Uh-huh.
So there's some other things you can look in that seem to correlate pretty well.
Yeah, and this site we pulled up, we double checked, and every one of these lines up with the book that we're using, so it's an easier visual.
It might use a slightly
visual
different
for you guys.
name, but it's the same meaning.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know who this spiritual Ray is, and we're not promoting him or anything, but I wanted to have a visual aid for you guys.
Yeah, because we're still using the book, but
so
I can't
look at the
just hold
numbers
it
too.
to you very clearly.
Yeah.
There was something else I saw. Oh yeah, and everything too is that in 1 Corinthians, I think it was 2. It basically says that without love you're nothing. So it's like love is associated with death, the earth, the unlucky number 13, which is considered,
which we discussed in our last
depravity
video.
and rebellion.
Yeah.
And then also, where is it? and then also, but you have not love, you are nothing. So it's like love seems to be pretty important. It's like it's a I guess a slippery slope maybe.
Oh, but the Bible also says love is stronger than death.
True.
Yeah. So maybe there was a mathematical reason for that particular verse.
Yeah,
So,
like it's found 23 times, but it's because it overcomes death, maybe.
Yeah, that could be it. So, what else did we have pulled up there?
Another thing too, and the reason why I did this on New King James is because I want to actually go back to the previous version, because it says it a little bit differently in the King James version. So the difference between New King James and King James is that one's like the old school and one's a little bit cleaned up, so it's easier to understand. But one of the things they changed was that they changed the word that they use for love, they used a different word and then changed it to love. However, the rest of King James did use the word love. It uses a specific version of the word in this in First Corinthians, and then the New King James just added it into just love, like the rest of the other passages used. But however, in First Corinthians, it actually uses charity instead of love. And the thing is that charity is a 7-letter word instead of being perfection. And this one verse uses a different word than love because it's referring to a more perfect love.
Yeah.
The rest of the Bible in King James still uses the word love, but it uses a special version of it here, which is charity. Which everyone knows the term charity means to give without asking for anything in return.
Yeah.
And so that's the idea of a perfect love.
Interesting. So it uses both words, so they have to have a separate meaning, or it would have just used love.
Yeah, it's agape love.
Yeah.
It's that whole thing where there's like 4 words for love. In the King James, it kind of adds the 3 of them together into just love, but it keeps agape love separate as charity.
Yeah.
She's about to fall over.
She's doing her thing because.
Well, she's barely holding on.
I'm having to hold her. She's about to flop over.
But the point though is that love is a 4-letter word, but charity is a 7-letter word. So I think that also has some meaning to it.
Yeah, because 4, again would represent the earth and whatnot, and charity represents man. So maybe charity is a more perfect.
Well, no. Man is number 6, not 7.
Oh, sorry, but
yeah,
God,
7 means perfection. Yeah.
See, she's there goes my brain. I mean, this is her sole purpose in life lately. Again, we call her Ambien because she gets on people, they forget what they're doing and fall asleep.
Yeah,
and she does it on purpose.
Actually, for this one using King James, that's another thing too. King James version for John 3:16 still uses loved, not charity, but it might be because of the it's using past tense loved, just because that makes it easier in English.
Charitied.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that might just be for English sake.
Yeah.
But since you mentioned the number for man, you might as well go to number 6 and look that up.
Okay.
But now you're kind of getting a good sense of why these numbers seem to actually have a connection and are very important, and that God does actually use them.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you're not convinced by now, then it's going to be a little bit harder to convince people.
Well, this is why numbers are important. Again, when you study Revelation and start looking at 666 and 7 beasts and all these things, there's a reason there's numbered 6, for instance. Everyone looks at 666 as a whole number, 666. And it can be taken that way with biblical numerology. But if you look at the numbers individually, 6 means weakness of man, evils of Satan, or manifestation of sin. Eek. If you just take that as the first 6 is weakness of man, the second 6 is evils of Satan, and the third 6 is manifestation of sin, that's bad enough. But I looked up, and I believe 600 is mentioned in the Bible, and so is 66. It's all bad. Do you want to see if that's there?
I already highlighted it.
Oh, okay.
Here's another thing, too. 6 is a number right before 7, which means it's 1 away from 7, which is perfection. It's basically underperforms, essentially. It's unable to reach 7. Kind of thing.
Well, if you look at the 7 days of creation, man was created on the 6th day. Most people always hear the 6th day or things like that. A Hebrew slave had to serve for 6 years. 6 years the land has to be sown and rest on the 7th. These are all biblical examples, but should be followed today. It would be, not the slavery thing, but the land thing.
Well, I had another thought too. When I said that 6 is just below 7, I thought about what's the numbers. Basically, 666. It also kind of follows the thing of it's just falling short of the number 700, right?
Right.
So then I thought 666 is 34 less than 700, and 34 is the number for naming of a son. So I'm wondering if that's referring to the naming of the beast. Yeah, so the beast is fallen short of divine perfection.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's the thing with biblical numerology, and now we're going to really throw you off. So, let's show this. For instance, see, he's got the number 34. In biblical numerology, that can be taken as 30 plus 4, or it can be taken as individual numbers, 3 and 4.
Yeah.
So 3 and 4 would be, divine perfection, plus 4 would be earth. So, or 30 plus 4, if there is a 30 in there. That's the thing. There's multiple meanings, but you'll find they usually go together. It's crazy fascinating when it happens. Is there a 30?
A 30, yes.
So what's 30 mean?
Dedication, blood of Christ.
Okay.
And 4 is earth.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense too, you can see it as the earth's version of the blood of Christ. Like it's because the Antichrist is the a counterfeit. So it'd be the earth's counterfeit to the blood of Christ.
Right.
You can see it as that too.
Yeah.
And that's why it's fallen short of 700.
And you just must have thought to do that. So.
Yeah, I didn't come up with that before the video. I did it during the video.
Yeah.
So sometimes the numbers, you can start catching little glimpses of that every once in a while.
Yeah, and that's the thing I hate to say with the Bible, read between the lines, but if God is so specific about putting something down, you have to ask why he didn't do the other things that may have led up to it, or you have to kind of look between the lines. That's
why our other video about the meteorites we made specifically because people weren't reading it clearly. We had to look at why it was so specifically written the way that we realized there was actually 3 events being referenced.
Yeah.
Where most people thought it was a single event, and it's because people weren't paying attention well enough to the importance of the wording that it was using.
Right.
When it referred to a flaming mountain, but then referred to a star, it's not saying it's the same thing. It's saying one is one thing, the other is a different thing.
And don't put reading the Bible in a box, because as you can see, he came up with that it's like, oh, well, what if? And then God speaks to you in a different way. It may have been nothing.
Yeah, it could have been nothing. That's totally fine too, but it did have something that's potentially has some sort of connection.
Yeah.
And if it does, then it might be important to investigate further.
Exactly. So it's another tool. I'm not saying, and you could pour through the whole Bible on numbers alone and be absolutely fascinated. It's another tool. Since we've got kind of, I hate to say hooked on it, but we're constantly, what's this number? What's that number?
Yeah.
It's truly, it'll blow your mind. It's like Matrix level blowing your mind of a different angle of reading the Word of God or even reading anything. Numbers matter when something is divinely inspired. So, there's 66.
I just want to show people. Here is the thing that it's also going to probably blow your mind. There are 66 books of the Bible. And then weren't there also 4 taken out from the Bible?
Well, yeah, here's the thing.
Because it says there's more here.
This is the thing right now. When he says 66 books of the Bible, a lot of people are going to go, well, wait a minute, there was a lot removed. Then you have to ask yourself, but wouldn't God have been sure that didn't happen if it wasn't supposed to? 66, again, you're talking about man's number. It says here there was
66
70.
Actually has his own separate number too. 66 is idol worship.
Well, they said there was 73 books originally.
Well, I don't know what it's talking about. I only know the 4 that were removed. Because the thing is, there was 4 that I was aware of that were removed, and when you add those back on, you get the number 70.
Yeah.
But then it says there's 77, so I don't know where they're getting from that, you know? So, because it says, I guess maybe, is there a 73? No, there isn't. Yeah, but the point is, I've heard there are books removed in the Bible, but I'm actually not familiar with them. Other than there's a book of Enoch or something like that. So do you know more about
the
that?
The Catholic Bible, I believe, I've never seen one, but I think it contains the book of Maccabees. It has some extra chapters, ours doesn't. So, but as far as your common Bible, there's 66 books. So I think there's a reason that God had that happen, because of the number 66. So
yeah, well, the thing is too, it was the Catholic Church that removed those books, right?
Yeah, they're definitely involved.
Yeah,
you know,
they said that they weren't divine inspired. And so the Catholic Church took out books of the Bible, but of all the books they took out, it ended up with only 66 left.
Yeah,
it feels very kind of suspicious, or at the very least,
since it says 66 ironic. Means idol worship.
Yeah,
that's very ironic.
Yeah, so the Catholic Church, in trying to remove books because they felt they weren't divine inspired, ended up with the number 66 left in the amount of books.
And if you're ever interested in that, most of the missing books, or the ones that were removed, were you can find online pretty easily if they're not completely, some of them are in pieces. They don't have the whole thing. So I could tell you for sure the reason, like Peter, there was a Gospel of Peter. I read it online and it was removed, and they suspect the reason it was removed is the cross talked to Peter.
Huh.
According to his account, is the cross talked, and I think they went, well, but the other guys didn't say that, I think it was because they weren't all telling the same exact story.
When also the thing is too, the first 4 books are accounts of the same events, but from different perspectives.
Yeah.
Not just from their visual, like where they were and saw things, but also perspective mentally. For instance, was it John or Luke that was a doctor?
Luke.
Yeah. So from Luke's, when you read the Gospel of Luke, it's referring to the events from the point of view of someone who's scientifically and biologically minded.
That's why he's so descriptive of the crucifixion.
Yes, whereas the other ones wouldn't have thought of that as being so important because it's not what their focus was.
Right. Yeah, so it's not bad to have different, that's what we're saying here, different angles to your story.
So when one refers to something that the others don't, it's not because it didn't happen, but it's because some of them felt the need to explore that topic more, or some of the other ones probably weren't around when it happened, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you needed all 4 perspectives. And so erasing part of someone's perspective is erasing something that happened entirely.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's why I suggest that you find and read them. Of course, everyone would say don't read them as if they're canon, but they do, it really opened things up to me, and I understood the actual events that happened by reading, and it's like getting your HD version versus your VHS version of a movie. It opened up the whole perspective.
Not to mention, too, everybody's aware of the story of Lucifer falling from heaven,
So everybody might not be.
Yeah, but that's the common knowledge of, Lucifer was an angel and then cast into heaven when he turned to the devil.
Yeah.
That kind of thing, That's not actually in any of the Bible we have. It's in Enoch, isn't it?
No, that's where you're going to get really confusing talking about Revelation ahead of time. It happens, and we got to discuss this twice. It's mentioned in the book of Genesis. It's also mentioned in the book of Revelation.
No, it's not mentioned in Genesis. I've read Genesis.
Pull it up on Bible Gateway and just type in Lucifer and fall. I'm pretty sure I found it both places. Yeah, wrong one. Oh, Isaiah.
No, but that's not referring from. This part is.
That's the exact verse everyone uses.
But then we still there's more information about that than just he fell from heaven. A lot of people are very aware that he was like an archangel of heaven. He was an angel of light, or of the choir or something like that. Like, there's more information that is a something well known. It's like a what do you call it? It's common knowledge. Like, everyone kind of knows it.
Yeah.
And everyone talks about it, even in church. Like, the pastors will maybe have a sermon touching upon, and they'll mention, he was like the angel of light. He was named Lucifer and all that.
Curious, do the numbers of those verses mean anything in regard to
But my point, though, is that that is all those details that we have aren't explicitly mentioned in the books of the Bible, except for the ones that were taken out. So even if people don't think that those books count, they've already committed to memory and belief certain things from those books.
Yeah.
So that's why they might be important, because everyone already believes in them and doesn't realize it.
Well, I do believe that, and if you look at it, there is a lot mentioned, certainly about Lucifer in the Book of Enoch and other books that were removed. So I think maybe, and I'm just speaking off the top of my head here, maybe their intent was to kind of remove the devil because they didn't want, like they thought that God needed a script writer or something. He needed to be made better looking than he was, or they needed to remove evil from the world. But I had noticed it's in Revelation as well. It's just worded differently.
Yeah, and the one in Revelations might be referring to a secondary event.
See, that's what we need to study, because everyone thinks it was either... I've always heard it said it's referring to the past, but it may not be. So we have to definitely do a show on that one.
Well, anyway, so you asked about the numbers 14 and 12. It means governmental perfection and salvation deliverance.
Huh.
And it's talking about basically victory over Lucifer.
Yeah.
How you're cut down the ground, you who weaken the nations. So we should probably read this in context. But the point is that it seems to be referring to the fall of Lucifer in terms of like the end of Revelations or something. And that kind of makes sense. Also, I noticed.
Oh, for this year?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Wow, that is kind of heavy. In case someone's listening and not watching, 21 means what? He happened to have it highlighted on the mouse. Exceeding sinfulness of sin? Is that right?
Yeah, so the exceeding sin.
Wow.
So it's like, if that is referring to this year, 2021, it's 21 being exceeding sinfulness of sin. It seems to be pretty much a problem this year.
Yeah.
People have kind of gone nuts. Now, 20 is redemption, which feels like we kind of skipped that over.
Right.
Because 2020 did not feel like redemption.
No, but weird enough, so if you go forward, and I know we're going off track here, but we're talking about numbers. We were saying 2024 is the best candidate for the rapture. Look, it says it's 22 is light, 23 is death, 24 is the priesthood.
Yeah.
And then,
And 29 is the year...
Oh, wow, it means departure.
And that's the year that the asteroid's supposed to hit the Earth.
Yeah, wow, that's heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it gets... Again, numbers get very interesting, Not that it's, absolutely saying it for sure, but it's an interesting addition to what you're already learning.
Yeah.
Oh boy, Cuddles is doing her job.
Yeah, it's like you just look at these numbers, like there's gotta be some more connection to this kind of stuff, to what's been happening.
Well, it's an introduction to biblical numbers anyways. This is just giving you examples of, why and how. And I think right now people probably went, okay, yeah, numbers seem to, it's a little beyond coincidence here that they make sense, and that, especially the John 3:16 thing, that was the, frying pan to the face for me when he came up with that. I was like, holy cow.
Yeah. It's one of those things where the numbers might not matter at all points of life, but they matter enough to pay attention, at least within the Bible alone.
Yeah.
Heck, you mentioned in a previous video maybe getting a astrologer on to talk about the constellations. But the thing is too, astrology is a mathematical thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
Because the stars move by mathematics. You know,
Yeah.
it's all everything in the universe is mathematical. You know, everything moves at a speed that is a number, or you know, it doesn't matter what unit you're using. The unit will have a number. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's
like clockwork.
It is. I mean, there's definitely, and I think everyone talks about time is getting shorter, and and the clock is winding down, and things are speeding up.
Yeah.
So there could be some, truth to that if you just look at numbers. But if you look at astronomy and astrology, which is kind of the study, things are speeding up. As far as the rotation and the movement of the stars and the constellations. So it's getting very interesting, and again, we're not, boy, are we going to sound like kooks to some people. Like, well, these guys are into numerology and astrology and they're trying to mix it with the Bible. Nope. We're just trying to show you how to understand Revelation, because you cannot understand Revelation without numbers and without astronomy/astrology. You just can't. It's she's going to go over to you maybe. You just can't. So
yeah, because it's
because that's
the numbers are mentioned in the passages themselves, not just the numbers of the passages, but like Revelations is speaking of numbers, like the number of the beast and other such stuff. The numbers have importance, and then it also mentions things that seem to not be literal, and so people think of it as kind of you just have to read between the lines, like, but it might actually be literal if you think of it in the sense of constellations.
Yep.
Stuff like that.
And the thing is, the timing of Revelation, you won't know or understand if you don't actually study the stars. So you'll understand. You might, if you're around at that time, you'll go, oh yeah, it said this, it said that. Everyone talks about the mark of the beast, things like that. You're not going to know when it's coming. The Bible says that we can know the season, and the only way you know the seasons is to understand astrology. So
and numbers.
In numbers. And so I, when I first started hearing about this, I just closed my mind. I was like, no, this is a load of BS, and I'm not going to be involved in this. This is heresy. It's, possibly satanic, and then again, I had to open my mind and actually study it, and I went, yep. Yeah. So it's
the fact of the matter is that the devil always corrupts things that of God. So when you have things that seem satanic, oftentimes it's because it's become satanic through the work of the devil trying to make it that way and corrupt.
So
its
that you
usage.
don't study it.
Yeah.
If he can convince you that astrology is satanic, and I'm not saying in any way that I do astrology or I read astrology or anything like that. I simply do it in Revelation with the studying of the constellations.
Basically, the devil isn't going to try to put a blindfold on every single person himself. He'll instead just have you guys blindfold yourselves.
Yeah.
And save him some time.
Exactly. Why should he work so hard?
Yeah. So if he can corrupt something so that people will willingly blindfold themselves, then he doesn't have to do any more work because everyone's walking around blind.
Yeah.